Welcome to the Rise Network Podcast Show, a podcast dedicated to help you reach your dream lifestyle through investing in real estate. We're going to be sitting down with new, intermediate, and experienced investors to talk all about real estate and how it has changed their lives. If you're looking to scale your portfolio or even just get into real estate investing, you're in the right place. Make sure to tune in.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Austin Ye. And if you're hearing me say the intro, you probably know Mayu's not with us in today's preamble. This episode is going to be a little bit different than usual. We still have an episode for you, but to be honest, guys, we screwed up. We did not get our episode edited in time. However, we still have another banger for you. About 2 weeks ago, Mayu and I were featured on the Jas Takhar Podcast. We had an amazing time on there. If you guys haven't checked the episode out already, we're going to dive into it today. Basically, we talk about a couple of relevant articles that were out and trending and gave our thoughts on it. We talked about social media. We talked about the changing landscape of real estate investing, how we are investing in today's markets, opportunities that are out there if the burst still works, and many other trending topics. Again, this is a recording from the Jas Takhar Podcast, and it's just Mayu and I being featured on. It's an episode that was released about 2 weeks ago on his podcast. But if you guys haven't heard it, I think there's still a ton of fantastic value in it. So without further ado, we're going to jump right on in. Just a heads up before we get started, this podcast is all about providing you information, not financial or legal advice. So if you need the real deal for your situation, hit up a professional. We can't promise you our information is always up to date or accurate, and we're not responsible for any investment decisions you make based on it. Markets change, information change, you know the drill. Anyways, thank you for hanging out with us responsibly. Let's jump right on in.
If you're watching live on Twitch, you know what to do. Ask your questions, and you're going to want to ask questions today because my guests are like these two. Yeah, I said it on an Instagram live. Don't let their young boyish looks fool you. They're men, but they're good looking boys. I got my boy Austin. I got my boy Mayu. How you guys doing today?
Doing good, Jan. Good, man.
Well, amazing. I appreciate it, man. I'm living the dream, buddy. I get to do this, which, we were talking for whatever it was, a minute or so off air. My favorite thing that I get to do on a daily basis, putting like my personal life, my 2 kids, my wife and family stuff, kind of that, like I call that pedestal stuff. I don't really like compare that to anything. My favorite thing to do is content. Why? Because especially in a long form like this, like we're going to go for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, 2 hours, right? And I get to learn from someone else, right? Where in my day-to-day job, being a real estate broker, having a team, it's been literally, I'm in my 20th year. There's some monotony to it, right? And I kind of know what to expect. Yeah, the market changes and all that, but I've been in the sales industry for coming up to 30 years that I kind of figured it out, so to speak, which some of that means that it really just comes down to adjusting. But when I get to sit with guys that had me on their podcast, and that's why I said it's been a long time coming, because you guys haven't been on the Jas Takhar podcast yet. You and I didn't even do it virtual.
We've had one.
No, Austin, I'm going to look back. I think it was some other type of webinar. I'm not sure if it was the Jas. If it was, then it was on Zoom.
It was on Zoom.
Perfect. Okay.
Pandemic time.
And Mario was too busy for us. Well, I'm not sure which one it was. He didn't make it out. But to answer your question, brother, I'm truly living the dream. Like you noticed the sign that said established in Rexdale. Like I'm a kid from Rexdale that now gets to speak to whoever wants to listen, for all the people that are watching. Started this podcast 4 years ago, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of downloads and views and all that. I'm not saying that to impress anyone. Truth is, I was like, fuck, nobody's going to really listen other than maybe I knew my family would because they would support me. And I was like, my clients will listen because I've nurtured them for so long. I never thought like I would be walking in a condo elevator and people are like, hey man, it's you, Jas Takhar, like from the podcast. And it feels nice that you put in all the work and people are listening. And I'm talking to 2 podcasters, right? So first and foremost, what's your podcast name? Where do people find it? And what is it about?
Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast. And then we're excited to feature.
Right. I love it.
Most of our downloads are Spotify, iTunes. That's a real platform. We started doing YouTube literally in the last like 3 to 6 months or so, right? ultimately just more so like to change it up, to expand the network. We were talking about this right before with the entire LinkedIn approach as well, right? Ultimately, the real estate as a whole in Canada is a niche topic. And then you target investors. Now you're going even more niche, right? And so really, instead of like trying to all just go after the same market space, we realize there's a lot more platforms out there that you could essentially just add them on very easily.
So you do the recording, because you kind of glossed over it. You do the recording. It's you two hosting it. You bring on guests, and then you do the recording like virtually, right? From what I remember.
Yeah.
You guys are in separate places as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you take that recording and then you put it up on YouTube. So it's kind of like a video podcast, essentially. Like, I think that's the word.
Yeah. We worked our way there. Initially, we were doing just Spotify to Mayu's point and Apple.
Yeah.
Then we realized for people to discover our podcast, they legit have to search for it. Right? They have to search, an investing podcast on Spotify. So it automatically needs to be in their head. So we figured, cut it up into shorts. We got inspired by you and seeing what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
So we're cutting up into shorts. We're going to throw it on TikTok. It's on YouTube. I think, what was it? Like our second or third short with Andrew Trubetta. He's a paralegal. Okay. We got like 3K views on our short. On YouTube short. Yeah.
It's insane right now. I've been screaming from the rooftop, especially to 50% of my viewership is real estate investors. 50% is real estate agents and real estate professionals, the mortgage guys and all. Like, I always call them the cousins in our industry. I'm like, guys, I know you like to go on Instagram. I know that's the thing and it's kind of cool. First and foremost, I think Instagram right now in 2024, February, is a very tough place to break through because there's so much content going there. YouTube Shorts, you put up a fucking video, you'll get 3,000 views, you'll get 5,000 views, and it's gonna have more of an evergreen effect. And what I mean by that is because it's sitting on YouTube as a short, people search on YouTube, which will give people the opportunity to also go to your long form.
Yeah, it's a search engine, right? It's basically, I think Gary Vee says it, like the search engine now is TikTok, it's YouTube Shorts. Like I'm planning a trip, we're talking offline, to Mexico City to find things to do. I'm not going on Google and clicking on websites at all. I'm going on TikTok and saying 5 things to do in Mexico City and just watching through those reels. So we have to, like, even as investors, our content to us might seem dull, but we have to adjust. They're
talking about where does ChatGPT fit in all this, right? And it's like if you go on ChatGPT if you want a specific answer, you go on YouTube for like the how-to videos, how to build a table, how to whatever, right? How to invest in real estate, all that stuff is on YouTube. You're not going on ChatGPT and asking it that, right?
100%.
So each platform has its own application, and so we're still, like, in our opinion, we're breaking in. Like we're at the very early stages of like getting on.
Well, I think you guys went you went about it the right way. And what I mean by that is that if people ask me all the time, like, should I start with the short form videos or should I go long form? My advice, and I'm not sure if it's right for everyone, it's been right for me, is go long form. Because if you have the ability to go, like your guys' podcast is like 45 minutes, an hour or something like that. And if you feel like cutting it short, whatever. Out of that now, you can take out these 1-minute videos. I think it's tougher for people to start with the 37-second video and then work your way up because this takes endurance. Like, I'm not like, it's not a marathon race by any means to do an hour conversation. But when you have that habit, and please, like, if you disagree, I want to know about it. Like, if you have the habit of being able to go long form, I think it's a lot easier to just not only take out the content, but then do your own 37-second video because you're like, shit, bro, I went for an hour. Like, you also work out the kinks of the insecurities.
Right.
Yeah. Because in an hour, you're going to say some dumb shit sometimes. Or you're going to stumble. You're going to say, you're going to say...
People can stick around and you're like,
exactly. You know what I mean? And if you have the ability to keep people on for an hour, you're probably talking about something that's engaging. Did you guys feel that, like, by going long form first?
I think content is constantly changing. And so when we take it back to 2019, because you started in 2019, I started right around 2020, kind of COVID time, just even being public about our investing and what we were doing and all that kind of stuff. At that time, I could do a blog post during COVID, post it on a Sunday morning, and it would get like hundreds of thousands of views and like reads. And I'm like, yo, what the heck? People are reading like blog posts. That's long form content. But that was a time when people were sitting at home doing nothing. You post on a Sunday morning, you're nailing the timing. People are just going to read it. You post a blog post today, it's not nearly as good as it was back in the days, right? Even with more followers that we have today and so on. So blog posts used to do really good. Then proof of concept in every like realtor's journey or investor's journey or whatever, proof of concept became really important. So showing the deals that you're doing, properties that you're buying, all that kind of stuff was really important in getting ourselves established. And then it went from that into, we found the podcast is really good to actually build a community, build like a loyal like following, right? And then from there, we still do the podcast, and then you try to add on the short form clips to show theoretical like competencies in short kind of like blasts. And then what we found really recently, like we were talking about as well, is memes are doing really good. Because like it's become so much that you go on Instagram and it's so educational to the point that it gets kind of boring. Like I have to go on TikTok to dumb it down a little bit. Right. If you're going on to catch a break, right? You're not going on to learn and like Google.
And people on those social platforms are going to get entertained.
Yeah.
If you can find a way to use I don't even know if it's a real word, but like edutainment, I think that as a content creator, if you can cross that, I think you have a much better chance of winning, because when they're going on these social platforms, they don't really want to learn. Right? Like YouTube, obviously they do, but if you can find a way, and those memes probably help with that, right?
Yeah. The memes, what I find it does, it helps with reshareability. So when I look at the analytics of the meme, a lot of the audience are non-followers. Now they're not going to get value out of it. They're going to get a laugh of it, but they'll follow me as a result, and they can stay for the other content that's on there.
Right. Especially if they like it, kind of thing.
Exactly. Right? So it becomes sort of like a lead gen. In terms of like the long form content and short form content, I think you can go either way. So what I've done is, like, when I do Instagram Reels, like short form Instagram Reels, I can easily turn that through long form through using AI now, right? Through using ChatGPT. So I'll transcribe my 30-second video on like what's an appraisal, and then I'll throw it on ChatGPT. I'm like, expand this and turn this to a full blog article. Take that, throw that on LinkedIn, right? Or I can create another long form video from it. And vice versa, right? Like you can turn long form into short form.
Exactly.
That's easier, sure. Yeah. But I think with AI, I mean, you don't the other way. Going the other way around, it becomes easier.
100%. I mean, today's conversation, this is why I love going long form, because we had no idea that we were going to be going into this much of a content talk. But I hope everybody who's listening right now and watching either live or the recording, and if you're watching live, just throw in your questions. We'll make sure that we get to it. But the role that content plays, like it doesn't matter what you do. These boys are not, correct me if I'm wrong, none of you are licensed real estate agents. Unless that's changed in the last year.
Mortgages.
Mortgages, okay. Yeah, so you're a real estate professional, the cousin talking about in the industry. But even as investors, that's what the conversation is going to be about today. You know the importance of content, because at some point, you guys probably hit a wall. It's what I always tell investors. At some point, you're going to hit a wall where you can't get financing. It's not going to become as easy as it was maybe for the first 5, 6, 7 properties. And for some people, maybe after their first 2 or 3, right? One thing that you're going to have to look at is doing some type of joint ventures, getting some money partners, raising some capital. And I got to tell you, I probably get, without any exaggeration, every week I get at least 3 emails in the last 5 years, every week nonstop, of somebody trying to raise capital. And I don't know if sometimes it's directed to, like, I know it's not a mass email, but the first thing I do is look into see, like, what credibility do you have? What are you talking about, right? Hence why I'm sure you guys have been able to build out your portfolios to the place that you have now, because you have the credibility of the content that you put out there. And people know, like, you're talking about what is an appraisal? What are some ways to maybe get some financing, right? Like, when people see you online, they're like, all right, you're not just some fucking shyster trying to raise some capital because this is your first time at the rodeo, right? Yeah. Anyways, guys, I got some stories that we're going to cover. A couple of things. You guys tell me where you want to start. There's no really rhyme or reason to it. A couple of articles that I thought, because you guys are investors and you speak to a lot of people through your podcast, through your day-to-day, something that just came out from RBC was housing prices expected to hit bottom in Toronto this spring. I'm always interested to know how people know when the bottom's going to hit.
About prices, or was it?
We're going to go into this. I just want to go over kind of maybe the table of contents a little bit. Like, housing minister says building homes is vital, regardless of interest rates. Interest rate cuts would ease housing supply constraint. Fraser suggests, Fraser being the housing minister. GTA market stats. I like to talk about kind of what I call the swing cities, which for me is Durham and Brampton. We'll talk about why I mentioned that. But before I go there, are you a Max fan? Is that what the reference line is? So I'm not. Shout out to Laura. She's a massive Max fan. I think it's because, like, they're both Dutch. I think that's why she kind of swayed towards being a fan of his. Curious to what your thoughts are on Richard Hamilton.
Richard
Mr. Hamilton. I always call
Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton.
I'm a basketball.
Yeah.
So I always, Lewis Hamilton, moving over to Ferrari.
And he's not going to win it.
You think so?
I did.
Yeah. Are you like
shocking? I didn't really.
Since Max came out, that was your.
I think he has generational talent. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to compete with it.
Even with a new car, like yeah. No. Okay, interesting. I just want to get your take on it. Where do you guys want to go first, man?
Should we just go? Let's start with the bottom.
Start at the bottom.
The bottoming of the price.
Perfect. The bottom of the prices. Okay, perfect. And my boys bring it up. We have it here. Perfect. Okay, so Canada is seeing early signs of a housing market upturn, and Toronto could see prices bottom out this spring. This is a study from Royal Bank. So we always like to obviously quote where these studies are coming from and where these articles are coming from. It suggests that the downturn that started in the spring of 2022 may have run its course. Interest rate drops for fixed rate mortgages since November have cracked the door open for buyers and growing expectations. The Bank of Canada's next move will be a rate cut are tentatively bolstering. It's interesting because in January, obviously, the Bank of Canada left the overnight lending rate. If anything, new listings were on the weak side, working to tighten demand-supply conditions. There's a risk mortgage renewal payment shocks could set off wave of distressed sales, the report read. What's your guys' thoughts on this?
Or should I start? You start. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so based on what we're seeing right now, and you could probably attest to the Jas, we're seeing a lot of multiples come back, and we've been seeing that since actually late December. There were properties, like just anecdotal starting off, like there were properties in Bowmanville. I remember it was like December 18th. I was hanging out with one of my buddies who's a realtor, put an offer on that property again, December 18th. Traditionally, you're not supposed to have multiples that people are getting ready for the holidays. I think it was 25, 30 offers or something ridiculous. So people are almost trying to front run the Bank of Canada rate cuts, right? So there's a little bit of FOMO that's happening right now. But also keep in mind, we're also coming off from the lowest sales in Toronto the past 20 years. Like, and that's when rate environment was high. We know the rate environment's probably peaked and it is gonna cut. It's just a matter of when or how aggressively. So I don't think this is any sort of like special call. I think most people would agree that prices are probably going to recover this year. We're already seeing multiples come back. Mm-hmm. And if rates do cut as expected, then, I mean, people are going to jump in. I think the big caveat is that, one, if inflation, so US data came out yesterday, if inflation remains elevated and it actually failed to meet expectations, right, both core and like overall inflation, bond yields have shot up a little bit yesterday and today. As a result of that, if we're seeing that rate cuts are going to be pushed out further, that may taper people's buying expectations. But I mean, you're letting in 1.2 million people into the country. Housing starts are at record lows. It's a formula for pretty much like it's a housing disaster in the sense that, I mean, there's going to be way more demand than supply of housing. So whether it's going to be this year, next year, we're going to see prices recover and recover strong somewhere down the line soon.
Yeah, my only thing with this article that I'll add there is I think this is a lagged indicator already, right? Like I would, based on like what I've heard and seen just from talking to other people, it seems like the peak buying opportunity was October, November, maybe into early December. Rates were higher. It was extremely hard to qualify. There weren't multiple offers. You could get conditional offers accepted, walk away if you want, whatever after that, right? I'm always of the theory that by the time the news is talking about it, it's a little bit too late.
So I completely agree with you.
You get the best data from kind of like noise on the ground, right? We've both been making offers recently, and I've been getting outbid, and I know Austin's lost a couple.
And what areas is that in, guys?
Toronto.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, because I know at some point, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys were like going out as far as like Sudbury.
I'm still doing.
You're still doing that, Mayu?
Yeah, last year we bought a property in Sudbury as well, and then but since that one, we're looking for development plays. What I'm looking for now is different from what I was looking for a couple of years ago, right? So when you're looking for development plays, the cost of construction is the same really wherever you build. If anything, in some of these further markets, it's a lot more expensive, right? Mm-hmm. So then you really want to buy in markets where the resale value is the highest as well. Toronto, Kitchener, London, Barrie, maybe, right? And then what's the easiest to manage? You might as well buy in Toronto. The price
in your backyard.
Yeah.
And you just have the steady flow of tenants coming here, right?
Yeah.
And we can talk about like why you're looking into areas like Sudbury and stuff like that as well, Austin. For me, I do, and again, something that some would disagree, is that the class of the tenant, in my opinion, generally speaking, for the last 30, 40 years, in terms of income and staying long term has been Toronto. Right. I'm a big believer that it's just easier to maintain if it's in your backyard. Now, full transparency, I just closed on a property in Florida, which obviously is not in my backyard, but I just liked some of the numbers that I was seeing in Orlando. When you say development, like what are you looking for and what are you doing there?
The 4+1 strategy, basically, right? So buy a single family house, make it into 4 units in the future, put a garden suite on it, exit to CMHC financing, right? The typical kind of like redevelopment play.
Yeah.
I always just look at like, where is the government mandate going? What are they trying to promote? And let's go with that.
Where's the big money going?
Not
right.
That,
the infrastructure.
The big money is going there.
Yeah, right. Like sorry, when I say that, I mean like in terms of infrastructure as well. Like when I see 3 levels of government pumping in money into a city, they know something. Like they've done their research, and their research team is a lot bigger than mine. I also feel like I'm not that smart, and I don't want to just guess. I'm just going to follow that big money. And that's what I kind of meant by that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Mayu makes a really good point. Like these opportunities, I think Bill C-18, it was 2022 or 20.
I think it was, or it was finalized like last.
Oh, it was finalized last. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So it's still early opportunities to break into that one. I remember when we were chatting, Mayu's first investment property was a pre-construction in 2014 or something like that, because there was a gap between the
gap between the detached and the condo market, right? When you can buy a condo back in 2015 for $300,000, or a detached in like Ajax for like $700,000. Yeah, North York versus Ajax, two different things. You might as well buy the condo. Made a lot of sense. Then in 2019, when I bought a detached at Dick Park and Ellesmere for $670, it was a 2-bedroom detached, like bungalow, small one. But they were selling condos that were 2 bedrooms for $550.
Exactly.
The detached is way more sense.
The gap wasn't as large.
Yeah.
So that being said, I mean, you almost have to look forward into trends, right? So you were looking forward into like this gap has to either close or increase, whatever the case is, right? And so I agree heavily. We know a lot of people who are operating in that space successfully because you have a new financing product, MLI Select, right? And then you also have these new policies like C-18 that are pushing for more affordable or the quicker housing build, So you want to sort of follow the trends instead of go against. And I think the big thing that people worry about as well is like the tenancy laws, the rent control. When you do these strategies, you overcome that, right? Like there's no rent control on these sort of new builds and developments, right? Which is very, very important for a real estate investor
in Ontario specifically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there's no tenant risk, right? So if we think back over time, like it was always duplex conversions that were people who were doing pre-2020, and it worked really well. Take a single family home, make it into 2 units, so on and so on. From 2020 to like 2022-ish, 3-ish, it was buying the commercial apartments that were doing like really well. Like we were all doing the smaller stuff too. We did some of like the bigger like commercial as well.
Say commercial apartments,
4+.
five or 4 in a box. 5. Got it.
Yeah. Yep. So that was working really well because cap rates were coming down as interest rate came down as well, right? So even if you did nothing in theory on these commercial apartments, you would just be able to refinance them and pull out a lot more capital just because cap rates came down. So for anyone that doesn't know, like these apartment buildings are valued based on a multiple essentially of net income, right? And that multiple was getting, I guess, bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So that strategy worked well. And during that time, all we heard about in the news was real estate prices are astronomical, blah, 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 stuff like that, which is true. And it was. Now, all you hear about in the news is rent prices are crazy high, increasing every single month. So the result is these tenants know, and nothing against the tenant community either, right? But
we love tenants.
But tenants know so much more that like if they were to leave, they would have to pay much higher, and therefore they're asking for crazy amounts of cash up front just to vacate a unit, which means buying an existing apartment building, your biggest risk is I have no idea how much of these tenants I'm going to be able to negotiate vacancies with. And if I get 100% of them out, I'm going to make crazy money. If I get 10% out, I'm going to be kind of screwed. Right?
You say it's not likely. Is that what you guys are seeing on the streets? Like a couple of podcasts ago, we were talking about the whole cash for keys.
Right.
And like to your point, Mayu, I mean, we had examples that we were bringing up that tenants were asking for like 25, 30, 40,000 dollars. For real? Are you seeing even more? Yeah.
Pretty reasonable, in my opinion. Like in some of these outskirt cities like Sudbury, Windsor, it's not abnormal to pay 10 to 15K
up front.
Yeah, up front. And that's on the, that's even on the lighter end as well, right? Like people know, for example, like these, we're looking at a property
The tenants have been there for about 6 or 7 years, paying about $700 a month. If they were to go to rent the same thing today, it would be $1,800 a month, right? And this is only 5, 6, 7 years ago. So the gap has increased so drastically. Even if you were to pay them 10 grand, they're not stupid, right?
Right.
Between moving costs first and last, there's not much left over.
Yep.
Right. And that, I think to Mayu's point, the risk is elevated in that asset class. And fair to them, if I was a tenant, I'm paying $700. I'd never move out, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of balances the risk scale where development almost makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
It's obviously more capital intensive as well. But at least with the pro forma, you can more accurately predict what the end is going to be versus with the apartment.
If you buy an apartment building, assuming you're going to get 30% out, you have no idea what that's going to cost you.
Yeah.
With development, it's just numbers.
Right.
Plug in the numbers, you can get as detailed as you want, and you can kind of figure out, does this work, does it not, right?
So are you looking into like assemblies and stuff like that? Like, are you going that far?
Those are
okay. Those are
too high budget.
right now. Like
Yeah.
right now. I get that. Okay. In terms of Sudbury, so you're not doing the development play there, Austin. Are you looking into older buildings there?
Right. Yeah. It's just basically the dilapidated building sort of strategy.
Okay.
Properties that need a lot of work. The entry price points are much more affordable. And it doesn't necessarily need to be Sudbury. I'm willing to go wherever the numbers make sense and where there's a decent population size. It can't be like 30, 40,000 people. Like I'm looking for at least 80, 90, 100,000 people in the city.
Yeah.
So just buying these distressed properties, doing some basic renovations to it and then renting it out, because the quality of renovations in these cities are not like Toronto renovations. To do a lipstick in Toronto still costs 60 to 70,000.
Sure.
You got to go high end with the finishes.
Yeah.
In cities like that, like you can go like cheaper sort of laminate or vinyl. You can get away with just resurfacing existing cabinets, et cetera, et cetera. So easier entry point at where I'm at right now in my journey. Right. That being said, you made a point about Toronto having the best sort of tenant class. I totally agree with that. One of the pitfalls of investing in these cities is that the rents are elevated there. That's not necessarily a good thing because a lot of them are blue collar and their minimum wage isn't necessarily keeping up with the rent increases. So even when I'm throwing out houses in the market, we're getting a ton of applications because vacancies are low, but the majority of the applicants, like, you guys can't afford this place.
Right.
Although this is market rent, I'm going to have to undercut market rent because I would rather that you pay every single month and you can afford it
100%.
than to collect more up front. And then I know that if anything happens, you're just not going to be able to make.
And then it's going to be very tough to get them out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. You guys did a lot of wholesaling and burring in the past. Is that something that's coming back now? I know you kind of mentioned it really quickly off air, like in terms of there's an opportunity for wholesalers. I want to go into that, but you want to talk about burring first?
Yeah, Austin's got the wholesaling company, so I'll kind of address the burring side. The burring strategy is the same regardless of what asset class you're doing it on. In theory, the development plays that everyone is doing, it's really still a burr. You're buying it, it's just a renovation. It's a lot bigger of a renovation, right? And then you're doing a refinance to pull out your capital, and then you're renting it out for the long term. We're doing the same thing even with apartment buildings. Like when the 7plex that we bought last year, there was tenants in there, but that was so undervalued that really the process and the effort of the renovation side is just conversion to a legality purposes, right? So the burr strategy is still working, and the properties that even Austin's looking at in Sudbury, they're still working on those as well, right? The reality is that today the dollars required are a lot higher, I find, right? So a lot of the entry level investments aren't making as much sense. Even the ones that I'm losing out in Toronto is to the guys that are coming in and they're buying like cash and they don't necessarily need financing because we lost one that sold last week for like $950 or something. I'm like, no chance to appraise at $950. I was trying to buy it at like $850, right? But it's
So sorry, when you say no chance of it being appraised at $950, is that after you do the repairs, or are you saying ahead?
like this is the tear down. It was a tear down, but
Got it.
I would hate to buy it at $850. Got it. That's a little bit higher. Worst case, put a little bit more down payment. Call it a day. Just go straight for development, anyways, right? But there's people that are buying these bungalows now all cash. If you're getting with like 4 people.
And do you think all the people that you were competing against were investors, none of them being end users? I'm just curious.
I was having that debate with someone as well. Like this was like a complete like
tear down. You can't even live in it?
You could gut it. You could gut it and renovate it and live in it if you wanted.
Okay.
But you're going to spend another like 100, at least 100 on the main floor and then another 100 in the basement. Basement had nothing in it, right?
Okay.
So we're talking at least 200 grand. So if you're buying it at $950, spending 200 on it, 1.15, why not just go buy the neighboring property that was sold for 1.15, right?
Yeah.
And it was a 50 lot though. So I understand why someone bought it at that, but it was only 100 in depth. Now the 50 lots are nice because you could sever it, go 25, 2 fourplexes up. So it's worth a lot more to the right person, right?
Now, when you say 100 depth, what are you looking for? Like 120?
120 would be perfect for the garden suite.
Got it. Okay.
But if there's no 120, you could still go 4 and 4 if you get a 50 because you can sever it, right?
Yeah.
So for the people that know, like it's worth overpaying because really each lot you're just buying for $500,000. The cost to build one of these fourplexes, even if you call it $1.5 million to $2 million, if you bought the land for $500,000 because you severed it, now you're in it for $2 million, going to appraise for 3 to 3.5, right?
There you go.
Or I guess maybe there's no garden suite, so a little bit less, but still, like the numbers are solid for the play. It just requires a lot of capital. And the most difficult thing that I've been doing is I've been trying to just go at it low, right? Versus a lot of people are coming in with groups of money, 3-4 guys putting together capital, right? Where you can make those kind of calls and you can kind of buy a property in cash, hold it, and then just, build it in the future.
And just we interviewed someone on our podcast yesterday.
Okay.
His name is Jaden. He's doing this strategy.
Yeah.
So, he's he has investors and they buy these properties in cash because the numbers become tougher when you start to finance it at higher valuations.
Right.
They buy it in cash so that the risk is minimal. They can take their time with the development. They get financing on the construction. But those are the people that you sometimes will be competing with, right? Especially if it's on the market, it's attractive to a lot of developers.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Okay.
So go on.
Talk to me about the wholesaling stuff. But what are you seeing there? What's different now than even a year ago, and comparing it to when did you start doing that?
Late 2021.
Okay, go.
So in 2022, when interest rates started hiking, we found that a lot of buyers sort of stepped their foot off the pedal, especially fix and flippers, which is the prime market for wholesalers, right? Because you're buying distressed properties. And anyone who wanted to flip, yes, they would buy wholesale deals from time to time, but mostly you could pivot towards the MLS because you can throw in all sort of ludicrous conditions and sellers will end up accepting it because there was no other options, right?
Yeah.
What we're seeing right now is that sentiment has not only picked up on the home buyer side, which is probably what you're seeing, but also on the flipping. These flippers are coming back because they're seeing that buyers are going multiples on turnkey products. That being said, some crappy properties that don't have development potential may not get multiples MLS, right? But they're seeing this sort of discrepancy where these distressed properties, they can get it under market value, and once they fully renovate it, all of these buyers are jumping back in. So we've been going pretty hard onto the marketing aspect again, bringing more leads in, and we're having deals sell sight unseen, whereas before was not happening, right? Before it was not happening. It was definitely a struggle to move deals, but now it's become much more easier. So more walkthroughs, more interest, and we're seeing our open rates in our emails. So we sent out our email list.
Yeah.
So it was 30% during 2023, summer 2023, and then late 2022. And now it's closer to high 40s, 50%.
That's rock star. 40-50% of people opening up an email. Just out of curiosity, you're sending this to thousands upon thousands of people, obviously, that accumulated over time.
Here's the thing is we did cut some people off our email list. Sure, opened it. So
it is. Makes sense. I call that cleansing. I love that shit. Every year, right on my birthday, my team and I, if you haven't engaged with us in a year and a half, we send out an email. Hey, if you still want to engage, just let us know. If you don't reply back to that email, we get them out.
Right.
It's all about quality over quantity when it comes to kind of an email list. It's just funny that we're talking about that because I think it's so important for people who are watching that don't get impressed by people who have hundreds of thousands of names in an email list. If nobody's opening it, it means really shit. But going back to your point, 50% of people, that's a good email.
High 40s, 50% people are opening. That being said, what I've noticed is that I don't want to be overly bullish. It's some markets that are better than others, right? So if we're doing rural wholesaling, cricket. Unless the deal, the numbers are spectacular, but a seller will very rarely, even if their property is ultra distressed, they won't sell it at the price that we need it for, right? Right. Attract investors. So it's more so these big.
And is that, sorry to cut you off, but is that because they've owned it for so long, in terms of the rural guys, those sellers, they've owned it for so long, they don't really, maybe they're going into some type of distress situation right now, but why wouldn't they sell it at the price that you're looking for? What do you think?
I think, a lot of them will need money for either their next move. They're usually moving to a lower cost city. That's the vast majority. Okay, from what we've been discussing, sellers why they're selling. And sometimes, alternatively, in these rural areas, even if it's a good price, it will still sit on the MLS for a long time, even if it is a good price, because there's just not much sales volume, activity going there. Right? It's limited investor base. Whenever we wholesale deals anywhere close by the GTA or within an hour and a half driving distance, those are what start attracting multiples. We wholesaled a deal last year in Toronto. This was in East York. It was a detached house, quite small, 975 square feet. We wholesaled it for $680,000. Those were the opportunities that were there last year for people who wanted to pull the trigger. There's still opportunities today, but obviously market condition has shifted a bit.
And you said like that 680, was that kind of timing it with what Mayu was talking earlier about October, November kind of, or was that even?
That was in November.
Okay, yeah, so it's funny, right? Because what you said earlier, man, like we're seeing these numbers now, but I personally, and the good thing is with content, it's all recorded, right? We were saying like the time that real estate really went on sale was from like September to December of last year. But people unfortunately hear it as, well, you're a fucking real estate broker. Obviously, you're going to be saying that. But now, I mean, if you can actually bring it up, if you go, Clyde, if you go to the Durham and the Brampton, doesn't matter, pick any one of them, buddy, whatever pops up first. Brampton, where all my paisans are from. You look at months of inventory here at 1.68 last month. In November of last year, 2023, in December, it was above 4 months. Like, that was the time when you had, as a buyer, so much selection. And I like to look at Brampton, and if you switch over to Durham as well there, Clyde, you guys can see, I mean, Durham's showing us 1.39. That's a month and essentially a week and a half. Like, that's how much inventory, if nobody's put another property for sale in Durham, that's all it would take for everything to be sold. Where, again, comparing this to going back to December, November, October, 4.5 months, right?
Yeah. Now, the caveat to this, though, I think, is we're in a scenario right now where sellers are, and you obviously know this way more than us, right? But sellers are holding off in the spring market because they've heard the same news that buyers have heard, right? Which is that rates are expected to come down. It went from April to now May to who knows when it's going to be, right? But, you know, there's this concern that you have a lot of people waiting to jump in on the spring market. I don't necessarily if we're going to see that big of a kind of spike up in inventory. Right?
I agree.
But, well, like right now, I'd say, or at least a month ago, we were in that period of no sellers, a lot of buyers waiting, right? Which kind of caused the scenario that we're in right now. A little bit more sellers have trickled in February because realtors have kind of recommended that right now might be the perfect time. At least that's what I've heard, right? But there's still not enough supply, right? And just reality. I don't know if enough is really going to come.
Well, look, I mean, there's another, why don't we actually even just jump to that, because you're actually talking about what our housing minister was talking about here. Says building homes is vital. So that's page 4, guys. Housing minister says building homes is vital regardless of interest rates, in a press conference, yada, 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 regardless of whether interest rates remain where they are or come down a whole point or a half a point or whatever may happen. The course of action remains the same because we know we need to build millions of homes. I'm just seeing if this was the same article that actually told us how many they're looking to get. We need to do everything we can.
So I see they said here we need to make the math work for builders. So at least they acknowledge it. Getting rid of GST, capitalizing Canadian mortgage bond program, and putting low-cost finance. They acknowledge it, right? Yep. And they're making some small changes here and there. Is it enough?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, the reality is there's something like 2 to 3 people per unit on average, right? It's not like it's not what per unit.
Yeah, the average household.
Yeah, the average
2.1, 2.2, something like that.
And it's not to be.
Yeah.
So if you have 1 million people coming in,
even if you think of it at a very small scale, 1,000 people coming in.
Yeah.
That's 250 houses.
Exactly.
Or more. That's 300 or something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know.
There's no subdivisions being really built within an hour and a half. You know what I mean? Like the last one that I got to my desk was in Colgan. Like exactly. Exactly. So that's I didn't know that my family bought in there. That is essentially about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes west of Alliston.
Okay.
Yeah.
So north of Caledon.
Right.
North of Caledon. But that's like, and even that, guys, I mean, that was a big subdivision that Tribute Communities put together with Graybrook, a good, a partner of ours for a very long time. I think they only did like 200 homes there, and that shit got sold out within weeks. So to your point, I mean, I like what you said there, Mario. I'm going to use that more often, man, because thinking about 1 million people coming in, it's hard for the brain to fathom that and then say 500,000 homes that you need. But I like the 1,000, and you need 250 homes, and you're just not seeing that. Hence why we see so many condos being built, because at least you can put in 250, 300 units in one place.
But even then, people are not building past 2 years. Like, the launches have not been going fantastic, and a lot of developers who stop off is just the pro formers aren't checking out because buyers are not willing to pay. They would just buy resale at that point, right? The gap became too large, and sentiment was at like all-time rock bottom. And so there was no incentive for them to build. They weren't able to hit their sales numbers. I think the only one, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think the biggest sale in the pre-con last year was Pickering.
2023. Right by the GO, like the train station.
95.
Yep.
Other than that, I think it was...
And that was price point wise.
Yeah.
Right? That was really...
Yeah, so it was I don't know why Pickering's selling at 1,000 square feet, but it is getting close. Like, sure, you can buy resale at 800-900, so it's not like, I mean, it's,
I think the only thing that helps them there, Austin, why people go down that route is because they can put that down payment over time.
Yeah.
Because you're bang on. Like, I had investors call me last year, and so let me take a step back to put it into context. We get about 60 to 70, so 2021 and before that, going back to a decade, we get about 60 to 70 projects at our desk every single year. Like, that's how many we get hit with. I narrow it down to 6 or 8 because it doesn't just, pass my test in terms of what I want to promote to my clients. Last year, 2023, I think I got like 20 and I promoted 2. We only did like 2. And that was actually based on the fact it wasn't even new inventory. It wasn't a new project. I went back to an older builder of mine where we did, I think, like 30 units in the building. And I said, look, if you can give me something with a rental guarantee, then I think my clients might like something like that, because then it puts them to sleep at night knowing what, with what's happening with the rates. We're not sure. And the play was out to like 2028 or 2029. Right.
Yeah.
The biggest reason I think Pickering sold really well last year was because, I don't have to come up with that full 20% down. I could do it over a 3-4 year period, right? And so most of my investors, though, when they called me last year, I was like, we could just like build some equity like tomorrow.
Right.
You get a closing date, practically speaking, in 30, 60 days, and we can start paying down this mortgage and building out equity right away, especially if you have the 20% down. It's a no-brainer because it's the same cost. In fact, there was resale that was even less than what pre-con was selling, right? So, I mean, in that sense, it's one of the main reasons why I think we see it. Let's go to another article. I know we went over the stats, which I really wanted to touch on because I've been getting a lot of questions around that. What do you guys see here? There's one that I wanted to touch on, which was...
I think we covered the answer there.
With interest rate cuts with these housing supply constraints.
That's the one. And that's the one. And that's actually the next page. Clyde, if you want to bring it up as well, buddy. What do you got here? That's the same article. Okay, good. I just want to see if that was a video that you want to play. Don't ignore the impact that interest rates have on restricting supply as well. He said, my exception is if we see a dip in interest rates over the course of this year, a lot of developers and so this is exactly what you were speaking about, Austin, that I've spoken to will start those projects that are marginal today, but will actually pencil out 6 months from now if interest rates were to take a dip. Just out of curiosity to put you guys on the spot, when do you actually think we'll see a cut? And maybe more for you, Mario, because you're in that industry a lot, man. You're talking to people and stuff.
Yeah, if you asked me 2 months ago, my answer would have been different than it is now.
Okay.
The reality is 2 months ago, we were starting to see CPI starting to come down. We were seeing unemployment get a little bit even though it was increasing 0.1 at a time, it was still increasing, right? You were seeing GDP at 0%, which they're still forecasting GDP to stay at 0% for Q1, Q2, I think, and then Q3 magically it's supposed to start increasing. So, a few months ago, I would have been on the team of April or May or June, right? I probably would have said they're not going to have as steep of a cut as everyone was thinking. Maybe like a 0.25 at a time, like every couple months or whatever, right? Today, it's tricky because now we start to see CPI come up a little bit as well, especially in the U.S. We're seeing unemployment kind of stay basically flat. You're seeing GDP still stay flat, right? But a little bit more positive sentiment. You're not seeing as much of the
U.S.
off.
The U.S. increase in GDP.
Canadian.
Yeah.
You're not seeing as many layoffs and stuff like that. So I'm just big on the fact that the data has to support the cuts. You can't just do a cut for no reason. The big issue or potential reason for the rate cuts to happen is you're going to see a massive amount of renewals really come in 2025, right? 2024 is the start of the renewal season, but it's going to go into 2025. Everyone that got the 2020 1.5 whatever rates mortgages is going to be renewing in 2025, right? Or 2025, 2026. So we've got some time for that, right? Which really means like they could go the course of the year, right? So I can see another buying opportunity coming after this first wave of like buyers gets it out of their system. And you know, I'd put the odds at 50-50 of a June or May kind of cut, a small one, if anything, right? But if the housing market continues to do good, like what it's doing today, right? We might see buyer sentiment kind of peak in like that May timeline, right? Unless we get that cut announcement. And then if we don't get the cut announcement, then sentiment could just kind of drop off pretty fast.
Yeah.
And the other side, though, is everyone's watching these interest rate cuts. Like, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the fixed rate markets, because no one's getting a variable today anyways, because you got to qualify at such a high rate anyways, right? So really what you got to be looking at is the five-year bonds, right? The government Canada 5-year bonds. That's been like freaking like crazy volatile, right? And you can see an almost immediate impact on people's borrowing capacity, because we're talking about like in the beginning of January, it would have been like a 6%. In the end of January, it's at like a 5%. Now today, it's back to like a 5.7 that we're getting people, right? And that like 1% makes a big difference for people's borrowing capacity.
Can you just go into that? How do interest, like fixed rates and the bond rates, how are they in correlation with each other?
Yeah, so what everyone's talking about with interest rate cuts is essentially what will the BOC do with regarding the variable rate cut. The 5-year bond rate is based on a forecasted expectation of what rates will do over a 5-year period, right? So if you think variable is going to keep going up, then the 5-year will be higher, right? Because the fixed rate return guys want to basically price in future moves, right? So that's why every piece of news that's coming out, when it's so contradictory, like on one side you have inflation data that's bad, like increasing in a bad way, and the other side you have unemployment data staying flat, right? Those are contradictory news. So you'll have the fixed rate market jumping up and down with every piece of news that's coming out there. So everyone's watching the wrong thing, which is they're watching these variable rate cuts instead of just looking at the other data that kind of impacts the fixed rate market, right? And the other side as well that I'll point out is all these banks, the way they're doing it today is their posted rate will be at like 6%. And then really what we're fighting for is how big of a discount from the 6% can we get, right?
And what do you usually see there?
Well, like literally like a week and a half ago, we were at like 5.1.
Okay.
So you're dropping it from a 6 to a 5.1. That also means 3 weeks before that, they were dropping from a 6 to like a 5.7, right? So you almost don't know what rate you're going to get until like you got to watch the news. What's the sentiment? What are people saying?
Right.
Quickly send in a rate request.
Yeah. So right now, a 5-year fix is probably flirting around 5.5.
Those are like 3-year fix I was talking about. I haven't done a 5-year fix.
Okay, so and would you say that's the play? Would you say the play really is to go a 3-year on a fix?
Yeah.
And that you'd be probably at about 5.5, right?
Low fives.
Yeah. Okay. And why would you suggest the 3-year?
The spread between the variable and the fix is what we look at, right? So if the variable, if you're getting, let's just say like a 6.7 or a 6.3 or let's just say 6.5.
Yeah.
If you could get over 1% discount from that, my personal theory is that you're going to see a 0.25, maybe another 0.25 cut later this year. So that's a 0.5 cut.
Yeah.
Say in year 1, right? So if you went with the variable, then you're basically, so it's variables at 6.5, fixes at 5.5, let's just say. So you're paying 1% more for year 1.
Yeah.
That's my theory. Year 2, you're maybe at like a slight break even.
Yeah.
And then year 3, you really need to be about a percentage lower, right? So that the 3-year over 3-year period, it weighted average works out, right?
Yeah.
So when that delta is 1% between the 3-year fix and the variable, I'm telling people take the guaranteed savings today,
right?
Because you don't really know.
And so sleep well. And
just to chime into that, I think a lot of it is risk tolerance, right? Because we're saying all of these things that, the market is volatile at the end of the day. So you don't know if it's going to go up or it's going to go down because to your point, every little piece of news makes the bond market probability of rate cuts go up, down. It changes very drastically.
Yeah.
So regardless of the variable and the fixed spread, you want to have some sort of certainty, right? For the next 3 years. It could, CIBC, Benjamin Tell thinks there's going to be 150 basis point rate cut this year. I think that's crazy. But if that happens, right?
Yeah.
Technically speaking, maybe you should swing the variable way. but prediction is a shitty business, right?
Right.
The banks have made endless predictions the past like 2-3 years. I don't know any that has gotten it right. Like it's just constantly incorrect predictions. So I think to your point, having that element of certainty is extremely important for a home buyer and for an investor. For myself, like I lock into 3 year personally because I want to know what I can reasonably assume in 3 years our rates are going to be probably better than they are today. Hopefully, if not, then everything's going to be a little bit of a shit show. And so I want to lock in my pro forma for the time being. If I'm able to make the numbers work today, I want to have a locked in to mitigate risk. But I don't want to risk locking in 5 years at an elevated rate environment. So I think there's a part of there's a part of guessing, there's a part of like risk tolerance as well.
Now, when you guys are looking at properties in today's market and something that you've even done maybe in the past, how far are you working out your pro forma? Is it 5 years, 10 years? Is it a year? If it's not going to be a flip, right? So take that out of the equation because then it's probably based on how long is it going to take to do renovations and the build out. But in general, what's your guys' thought process and how far you're looking out with an investment?
What do you think?
Well, it's kind of interesting because our strategy of BRRRR, we're making majority of the money up front within like a year. And then after that, you're just holding it and you're just kind of like not worrying about it, right? Because with the BRRRR, the lift is up front, right? That's the work that we're doing. And then after that, you just want to run it on autopilot. But what I found is like a 3 year to 5 year kind of like timeline is realistic for me, right? Because the reality is like, where are you is the next question that you got to like think about, right? I haven't owned a single. I have like one property. I have like a couple properties that I've owned for more than like 3 years. But a lot of properties, like we bought like the condo, we bought it in 2015, we closed it 2020 or something like that. And then we sold it in 2022 or something, right? I had a house in Ajax, we sold that within like a 3 to 4 year kind of like timeline. Just because like what we're doing is constantly evolving and we're trying to go bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So like a lot of times like people think I'm going to own the same thing for 20 years. And the reality is if you're trying to grow and you're trying to scale,
right,
you're probably not going to.
Because you need to cash out at some point to scale up.
Exactly. Scale up, right? Versus like someone like my parents who like if you're or someone that's like 50 years old, right? Like when I'm 50, I don't intend to keep acquiring real estate, right? So at that point, and some of my properties today as well, like I look at them and we're trying to pay it off so that in a 25-year horizon, when I'm like 55 years old, it'll be paid off debt free and just kind of like really
live off that rent.
Yeah, those are like the apartment buildings, which I say that today, but like those are 7, 8, 9s. And if I started doing like 10 to 15, 10 to 20, or maybe the development stuff, if it kicks off, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe those ones are on the chopping blocks as well.
For sure.
Right? Take all that capital and just put it into
Do you think there's like and I want to come back to you with that same question as well, Austin, but really quickly about the apartment buildings. Is there a certain sweet spot in terms of units that might be something that investors should be looking at right now? Like, and I ask that from the perspective of like, I'm starting to look at like 10 to 12. Right. Where did I come up with that? There's really no like rhyme or reason to it. I just feel like it's manageable for me. 25, 30, I feel like, there's a little bit more risk and I don't want to take on that much. 4 to 5, I feel like there's a lot of people playing in there, or I think like that, maybe it's not exactly, 10 to 12, but it's probably like 9 to 12 kind of, where there's not that many people involved in that. But I could be wrong because I'm just starting that process to start looking at.
I think it's more so limitations on your capital and your personal investment philosophy, right? I don't think that there's anything wrong with going 30, 40 units. The people who do it successfully, I don't think that there's actually anything wrong doing 4 to 5 units. That's sort of the area that I play around. I think what's more important is like the underwriting. So understanding when you buy these like 9, 10 unit buildings, understand the tenant quality that is in there, right? If you're dealing with like all ODSP people, they're on fixed income, like good luck getting the turnaround. Same thing. If you're buying a 30 unit and they're all younger individuals making good income, they're probably going to eventually move out, right? Like I don't think it's a matter of the unit count. It's going to depend on your own sort of like qualification, the asset itself, like how much money you have to play around with, how much money you plan to raise. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's sort of what...
No, it's exactly that. One thing I'll say is that I think once you go over like 20, 25 units, you're competing with the fun guy.
Yes.
Yeah, right? So like the beautiful part about real estate is there is a part of the market for every single person.
Right.
If you're completely passive, you're a doctor, you're a high income earner, condos, very passive income.
Yep.
Makes the most sense. If you're someone that, you know, earning $50,000 to $70,000, $80,000, but you want to get started, play around in the single family duplex market. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Choose a market that works for you, right? If you've done a bunch of those duplexes, triplexes, try out a fourplex, right? And then go to the 7 to 10 is where I like to play right now, right? I'll give you guys an example of why you don't just go too big from the get-go. Like the very first commercial building I bought was an 8plex in New Brunswick. And we still have that one today. But when we bought it, we went through the due diligence. The guy gave me the receipts for I think it was electricity or something like that. And I was like, cool, ran my numbers on that, did my underwriting on that. He said he had 1 meter. He gave me 1 meter's worth of bills. I called the electric company to set up the utilities on the day after closing or something like that. And they're like, oh yeah, do you want to set up the second meter too? I'm like, what fucking second? Right? So there's a whole ass other meter, right, that the guy didn't disclose to me. So it's one thing when you make that mistake on an 8-unit building, right? It's manageable. You can swallow it. If that was a 30, 40 unit building, right? So it's all about like doing the steps and setting up appropriately, or get the mentorship that you need to level up properly.
I want to chime in something real quick. The pro forma question, just to clarify, I think it depends on what your strategy is and the asset class. If you're doing an apartment, I don't think it's reasonable to do a 1 year pro forma. You look at Braybrook and all of these big companies, they do like 5-year pro formas, right? And they do the turnaround. Like their assumptions on the turnaround changes. So your ROI changes, your internal rate of return changes. If you're doing a condominium, then you look at, again, like 3, 4, 5 years, because it is going to be cash flow and appreciation play, more so on the appreciation side. If you're doing a BRRRR, you really look at it like what you said in the beginning, you look at a 1 year, right? If you're doing a development, you still look at a 3, 4, 5 years, right? Yeah. So it's going to depend. Your pro forma is not going to be the same if you're doing an apartment to a single family. You need to look at what asset class you're playing in, and then decide how best to sort of calculate the numbers. In BRRRRs, again, just a year, because nothing is going to change aside from appreciation. But like the BRRRR investor, most of it is not appreciation based. It's like, what can you force immediately?
What's the risks when people are getting involved into a BRRRR? Because there's a lot of people who do content on the YouTubes of the world and on the Instagrams. I mean, obviously last year I didn't see it as much, but again, to everything that we were speaking about earlier, we're starting to hear about it now more. What are some of the big mistakes you've seen people make, or even personally make, at the start, so that we can kind of get them away from hitting their head against the wall?
We can talk about personal ones that we made, and then I talk about personal, you jump into this. Right? Yeah. So some of the personal mistakes that we've made is that like we focus too much on the pro forma and not sometimes on the asset quality that we're buying, right? So when we invest in Windsor, we buy these properties that are 100 years old, and then you can do lipstick renovations to make it look beautiful. That doesn't necessarily remove the inherent risk of an older building. There's older plumbing systems, sometimes moisture leaking in the basement. And so, yes, we get it appraised at the value that we're looking for, but, you know, like if we were to go resell that property, it may not necessarily sell for whatever the appraisal we're looking for, or the pro forma doesn't necessarily reflect all of the maintenance costs that we're going to incur holding this property. So we have assets where we pulled all our money out of the deal, and then now it's like we're fucking one issue after another it's like non-stop issues.
I'll shed some light on that real quick. Right. That's because that was our strategy. Yeah, our focus when we were first getting started burning in Windsor was we need to pull out every single dollar as much as possible so we can go and continue to scale up. Okay. Right? And for a long time, like we would talk about this, we didn't understand why the heck people would ever do a duplex conversion. Right? It's like what is a lot? Like, why would you're going to pay this much money, you're going to spend this much on it, and you're going to leave a net investment that seems like a crazy number, right? It's like, doesn't even seem like logically didn't make sense to us. The reality is you do a duplex conversion, you've got oftentimes brand new windows, brand new furnaces, separate meters, all new installation, all new electrical, all new plumbing.
20 years you don't need to worry about.
So like each strategy has its own focus, right? And it depends on like how well funded are you? That's exactly all about. If you can leave 80, 90 grand and probably go for the duplex conversion. Don't do the shit we do. Like, is a bill every single year.
It's like lipstick. You got to try to siphon every penny out. Yeah. You said it. Well, that's what problems I think get created, right?
I think that's like the common like everyone who wants to go into BRRRR wants all of their money out if they're newer investors. Like every investor that I've spoken to who's getting into the game, a lot of them, especially if they're younger, they're not comfortable leaving $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 into the deal. But sometimes, like that's the reality of the market right now. Sometimes appraisals will come in short as well. You might have something in mind, but if the market is not doing well and the sentiment is shifting, even if your property might be worth X amount of dollars, it could also appraise lower than that on the refi because you're appraising it too quickly. And then now the risk that we're seeing in bursts and the smaller multis, duplexes, single families is that once you appraise that ARV and you pull your money out, it's not even cash flowing anymore. Right. Because the ARVs are pretty elevated. The rates are high. You're basically you're buying a turnkey, let's say single family or duplex on the market. Essentially, that's what you're doing. And they're not very cash flow positive, right? We can talk about some of the risks that we're seeing other individuals get into. It's like,
I echo a lot of what you said. Some of the questions I get from some people is we spent X amount of dollars on the renovations and now nothing works, right? So on one end, you over renovated it. I'd hope that you over renovated and put money into the things that will have the 25-year lifespans, right?
Right.
But not always the case.
But sometimes they don't even help with the appraisal value.
And
it won't get value on it.
Yeah. So like, when I get that, I mean, spending money on the kitchen and then on the like an income suite or bathrooms, that's you're going to get your money back.
You get money on that, but the problems that we run into is like water tank breaks down.
Right.
Any money you put into water tank, they're money that doesn't care. Furnace, roof.
In Ontario, it's rented anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Not that we've done this, but every appraisal package that I've seen people put together is like brand new furnace, brand new windows, brand new roof. Appraiser doesn't look at it. Appraiser looks at the cosmetic shit. Right. So you're just trying to inflate your valuation so you can get more money out. As long as you know that that's what you did, right, and that there is a bill to be paid with that, right, which we've been paying for the last couple of years, right? But that helped us with our growth, right? At the same time, like no regrets, right? And you can sell off properties and stuff like that as you kind of evolve and go along as well, right? The second mistake I'll say is people don't study the data, right? They just think that if I put this money into there, this property is going to be worth X, Y, and Z, right? I know Austin at a point you had for all of Windsor, every sold property organized into, I think that was you, right? That organized into data that you could quickly rank based on neighborhood, based on how many bedrooms, bathrooms, whatever, right? And you could just quickly filter it through, right? And then sometimes people, because I also coach some people still, and they'll tell me, there's no comp for this type of property. Then you make the comp, right? Like take a 3-bedroom, take a 4-bedroom, figure out what that value is of that 4th bedroom, add it into a table, and you make the data, right? So there's not enough like data analysis that goes behind real estate. I think we're like both, like Austin was on the finance side, I'm a CPA by trade. So we both come with a more analytical head, which has oversight on other areas, like for example, construction that we don't really solve. Right.
But you guys are more left brain people, obviously. Like, I mean, you're very analytical. I think that's a massive advantage with when you're investing into real estate. I think you were talking about for a second there, Mayu, that it might even affect you in other ways, but I'm not sure if I agree there. Like, I actually think that it having more of that analytical brain has probably served you well and served you better than not having that.
It could, but I think it could be done for, like, you think
detrimental. Like, I think there's some emotion involved, and sometimes you just gotta, like, I am a right part of the brain guy. Like, I'd make a lot of my decisions based on gut, which has also got me into trouble in the past, right?
Right. Yeah, you're more of a visionary.
For sure.
So I guess one of the issues with being over analytical is like taking action, because you try to figure out every sort of risk and mitigate it. And that's impossible with any investment. You can't mitigate every single risk.
Yeah.
So you want the answers to everything, and you want to line up to be a perfect storm before you buy into a property. I have a buddy of mine. He's in private equity. He makes hundreds of thousands. And he wants to invest in real estate, but he spent the past 3 years trying to figure out like every situation. It's like, if you just bought in and, even flexed half of your analytical brain and just bought in, then you would have been better off for sure. Now, right? But it does have its detriments. I think that's what sort of scares me off into going into like development or some of the bigger rights is that like, how do you eliminate every risk? Right. And you can't. It's just not.
I always talk about it with my landlord clients, like, you want to get to, and you guys as investors will have your thoughts on this for sure, and as landlords, I want to get to like 90% with a tenant, because that 10%, at the end of the day, they could fuck me up, not pay for the thing, screw it, like, break things. It's like, am I at 90% with this guy or with this girl in terms of I've checked their credit, I've checked their socials, I've checked their references, I've done all that stuff, and then that like 90% of like, I feel like these tenants are going to be good in my place, but I always know that there's a 10% chance of them just not paying, them losing their job. Yeah. And it might not even be on purpose. They could have frauded the whole thing for all I know. It's that, like, can you just get to that 90%, sign the contract and kind of move on, right? Like, do you guys see that as dealing with tenants as well? Like, you can't really get to 100, right? To what you were saying.
I try to get myself to 100, and the issue that comes with that is I leave my property vacant longer,
right?
Ends up costing.
But how do you try? Let me ask you this question then. So maybe I should have phrased it differently. how do you try to even get to 100?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you can't get to 100. You have to be comfortable, but it is like there's a part of that gut feeling, and there's an emotional element. There's the analysis element, making sure that they have double or triple the income. But some of that doesn't necessarily reflect whether they're going to pay or not. So for example, we had a constable in our unit, police officer, makes $150,000. He stopped paying rent because he's going through a divorce situation right now. Yeah, he's going through.
Mayu just found out about that.
He's going through a divorce, and then it's legitimate. He's responding to the phone calls.
Got it.
He's not like trying to like
Dodge you.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, I was so confident because the rent, it was like $1,400 a month.
Right.
I was making close to 100.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nothing, right? But apparently his wife drank.
Yeah. I'd say like my stance on this has always just been the perfect tenant profile wants a deal, right? Like when me and my wife were like, we were renting in downtown Toronto for a long time. I didn't care if the building had certain amenities and like almost like everything was the same to me, right? So I just knew I wanted a deal. And maybe that's me, maybe that's not everyone, right? But at that time we were like combined income like 250 or something like that for two people. I knew we had good credit, good everything. Like there's nothing wrong about us.
You're coming to the table strong.
Yeah, and I just went out and I was like, look, like I know this is worth about 2,500, but I'll take it at like 20. I said something stupid like 21. And they counted me back at 23, and I was happy, right? So we moved in. We were perfect tenants. We gave them notice when we moved out. Eventually, we wanted a bigger place. Same thing again, right? So I kind of think about that from the tenant's perspective as well. I know that if you want a really good tenant profile, you usually have to give them a little bit of a deal on their rent. That's one thing, right? I actually like having multiple heads in my units, right? Whether that's students or friends or whatever it is, right? It's just ultimately the rent per head is a lot lower,
Like
right?
you guys mentioned the word mentorship and just getting help with data and experience. What's happening with Rise? Like, I want you guys to you have a platform, talk about it. What's going on? And maybe we're work in progress. And let me ask you this: what's some thoughts and some plans around what you guys want to do with Rise?
More events. I think we've been pretty bad.
In person.
Yeah,
you guys are feeling it, right? Like time to get back, everybody kind of thing. Or
We've done it like once a quarter, maybe once, like maybe 2-3 times a year, but we want to do that more frequently. More value in terms of we're doing live streams now in the actual Rise community.
Love it.
So we're talking about that offline.
Yeah.
Just interviewing and on the Facebook. It's everywhere. It's LinkedIn. It's on YouTube. It's on Instagram. It's on the Facebook page.
Okay.
It's like every platform.
And the Facebook page is Rise Network.
Rise Network. Yeah. So we're doing live streams with an expert. So this month we have Andrew Trubetta, paralegal, going to answer anyone's questions. Like a live Ask Me Anything with an expert guest. We're looking at potentially putting out YouTube content as well, right? With other investors going for like what we have. One of our buddies that we interviewed actually wants to walk us through his 5-plex development in Toronto. So that's something that we're looking at doing.
Yeah.
And
So I think Rise for a long time for us was just like a passion project that we ultimately just fell into, right? So Austin started up, it was back in 2019, right?
We did it, yeah. And then our first in-person event was with at the Open. The first presentation.
Is that what it was? Yeah. I did a networking one, I think, before that. I remember that.
Yeah. There used to be like 20, 30 guys at like a bar.
Yeah.
And then like less people, more people, whatever. It was just like casual conversations, right? And then we had the first in-person one was at your office, right? So that was great as well. And then COVID hit, and then at that point, I think Austin has blog to your article or one of those articles come up.
Yeah.
And so the Rise page just started blowing up, and you just started to build naturally.
Sure. I
was going to do a podcast naturally anyways. I just said, hey, Austin, how about we just do it under the Rise
together?
Yeah. And then we just started doing it together, right? And then we just put in like just a huge focus on just like value first, with no real like exits, no real like plan.
Trying to monetize.
No, yeah,
I think that's where you were going.
And we put off sponsors, we put off like everyone that has come to us. We basically said like no, just like no promotions, no nothing. Because if we let one person in, you gotta let in 10 people, right?
And I think speaking out of experience, guys, like the longer you can hold your breath to monetize, the more you'll make later on. And so your approach of just giving value is going to win. It's just a matter of how long can you be patient to do that, And so I've been through it where I've held off for a very long time, and it blew up my business in the most positive way possible. Yeah. Like the bank account got larger. I really want people to understand. I'm not trying to mince words by that. On the flip side, there's been times where I forced something And like I paid for it. I paid for it from a perspective of not only the bank account not growing, but from a brand and reputation perspective. And so if you guys are still in that, and maybe you don't even need what I'm telling you, but if you're still in that thought process, the longer you can hold off, you will win. Especially you guys, like you guys are younger, man, like younger than me. I'm 42 right now. And so the longer that you can hold off on it, it will pay off in spades.
Right. And I want to say kudos to you on your content as well. I see that you do, like, although you're an agent, a lot of your content is just about your day-to-day of what you do, like cold calls, et cetera, et cetera. People like to see that side of things, right? I think when people go on, like when a lot of new realtors or new mortgage agents, whoever, commission-based, start social media, they immediately try selling.
Yeah.
And to your point, people can read that and people don't like being sold.
100%. I mean, I was at a brokerage yesterday doing a talk, and I'm up there. I don't have a PowerPoint. I kind of just wing it. You guys saw it today. We come in here. We have some articles that I kind of just make use of to see if we want to kind of talk about it. But when I go on stage, I do the same thing. And yesterday, there was just something I felt in the crowd that wasn't landing. And so I went down a different route with them. I actually made live phone calls. So they actually heard, like, this is the real shit. Like, I mean, how many did we make, Clyde? Like, I think I made like 14, 15 calls that nobody answered. People are just sitting there waiting, like, oh, guess this guy's presentation's screwing up. And I'm like, guys, this is like how it really is. Like, you make phone calls and nobody picks up, but I'm not going to just sit here and quit, right? And what I was really trying to get across to them, to your point about they go in for the sale, I was like, we know this as humans. It would be weird if the first time you met a girl or a guy at a bar and the first thing you said to them was, I got a hotel down the street and it's room 213. You want to go there now? Like, we wouldn't do that. That's weird. Like, that. Like, people, I guess, creep out like that and they do shit like that, but you probably don't go in for the close right away. It might be a better idea just to say, hey, do you want to go for a coffee? A coffee turns into maybe a lunch. A lunch turns into a dinner. Then the dinner turns into a nightcap. You know what I mean? Now you can go to the hotel room, right? And I know I took it there because I really I want people to understand that should be your process with content. Right. That should be your process with business development, which is just give. And then you have the right to ask, and that can come through, in my opinion, the best way to do that is ask in private. Like, I like to put out all my content for free, and it's exactly what you guys are doing. Yeah. But you get into a conversation with somebody on a DM and they reached out to you, they call you, they email you. You have the right now to say, hey, like, did you want maybe some mentorship? Did you want some coaching? Did you want to look into investing into real estate? So I really appreciate you noticing. That means a lot, man. Your next in-person event, if you need a location, I'll tell you, because I'm all about collaboration over any type of competition. But I mean, not even that we're in the same field in that sense, but I've always liked you guys. I'll let you know that, I mean, you could use my space again, put whatever you guys want to put together, work it out with my team. If it's like a location thing, if not, maybe we can think of some other ideas on how we can collaborate. Where's the best places to find you guys?
Instagram for me probably is still the best. Mayu.Thava, Thava. Second best is probably LinkedIn. Is so where I get a lot of messages there.
And Reddit now too, apparently.
Hey, so you're doing on Reddit?
No, just commenting normal stuff, man. Honestly, so going back to one of the earlier topics. Like I'll plug. One of the better ways to see where consumer sentiment is Reddit, red flag deals. It's when news is lagged, right? Yes. That's when people are sharing like live, real time, like opinion.
Love it. Guys, we should look into it. Bring up some articles. See what people you might be able to sign Mayu. Awesome. Okay, go.
Instagram. Same thing as my Instagram at AustinYay6. You can follow us at Rise Network, just on the t-shirt here. And on LinkedIn, Austin Yay. You can search and find me on there too.
They can see perfectly. I'm just looking at the live feed right now. They can actually see that shirt as well.
Have it?
Boys, thank you so much for doing it.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for being in person.